All right, welcome to What About This, episode 11. Today we are talking about risk and calling. Ryan has some news that he's sharing with people for the first time. He is, and I'll say that for him, but it centers around this idea of risk and vocation and the nature of calling, right? What does it mean to be called somewhere? What is calling? And when we do that, the risk of doing big things and what that means for us and why we're afraid to sort of step out and do things. So we talk about how calling is wrapped up into our idea of purpose, who we are as people, what we think we are, and how it's also not just internal but external, what other people think about us, and the fear of failure. And we get into sort of some of our specific callings and some of the things that we've gone through. How sometimes we don't feel like we have the time, or we don't want to put in the time. I don't want to put in the work of the craft, developing the craft. Also talk about how calling is not just a singular thing in our life, it's a plural thing. We have callings, different roles of different things of what it means. I think we talk about how the ultimate calling is what is it to be human, calling to be human, and realizing that we all have the right to have a calling and the right to pursue a calling, and discovering who we are. And we talk about how that influences our world, influences our identity, and influences other people around us. So we're excited for this episode. As always, if you have any comments or if you have any, if you want to rate us on iTunes, you can do that, or follow us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter. And if you have any questions, sort of shoot us something and we'll get back to you. All right. I hope you enjoy the episode.
Brink here from Super BS, talking about the things you know you love and the things you'd love to know. Join us weekly for a podcast about video games. Mostly. Oh, yeah.
Welcome to this episode of What About This. Today we are having a pretty special episode. We are going to have to say goodbye to one of our own, at least for now. Goodbye to one of our own, Ryan. Ryan has had an interesting last couple of months, and he is going to be talking to us about that process, and then he is going to ask us a couple of questions of us as we sort of talk through what he's sort of transitioning into, and sort of the things that go along with that. So Ryan, why don't you sort of kick us off with what's been going on?
Yeah, so it's been a big few months for me. I was with my brother a while back. We were hanging out at the pool, and we're both pastors, and we got a phone call with an opportunity to go plant a church and start from the ground up in a town that we have never lived in before, and just kind of head out into a brand new season and see if we can make something happen. So I am actually going to go plant a church in Austin, Texas, which, if that sounds random, it's because it is. But we had our choice of anywhere, and Austin has just felt right. We spent a lot of time there the last few months, and love the town and everything that we've seen about it so far. And so this is the hard part for me, right? Because I've been in California for the last 5 years, and have a great job at a great church, and great friends, and then you guys as well. And it's been this just like amazing roller coaster for me, but it's time to pack up and go on to the next thing. And that is exciting, but very scary. And so I thought it would be good for my last episode to talk about this a little bit. In my kind of tribe, we use a word called calling a lot. And it's this idea for me that there are certain things that we are put on this earth to do, and that life is about trying to figure out what those things are. And then when we feel that call, having the courage to step up and go for it. But what we've always been passionate about with this podcast, if you guys haven't figured this out yet, is we take all of the things that are going on in our lives and we just put them on the examination table, right? And we ask questions. And we do that because we're not afraid of the truth, and we're not afraid of figuring out what really is true. And so I thought that would be good for us to do with calling today, because this is who we are. We actually do this like every day, just as friends, and then every once in a while we hit record and we turn it into a podcast. But it's just turned into a good exercise for us. And so when it comes to calling, I guess there's a lot of questions, right? There are always a lot of things going on underneath the surface of calling, like fear and insecurity, or maybe you hear somebody saying they're following a calling, and you go, oh, really? That sounds like you're really going to be roughing it over there, right? Or they've got this like great opportunity, this cushy job, or I don't know, this like really fun, exciting, adventurous thing. And so I think it would be good to talk a little bit about what is calling, what even is that word, and then talk a little bit about risk and doing big things with your life, with our lives, because this life is short. And so before all of that, it's been so good, guys. I'm going to miss this. This is, you guys are kind of like my therapist. You just help me walk through all of these things. And so it's been incredible. But we got work to do today. So what are your guys' thoughts on calling, on risks, and on trying to follow the path that we feel like God or ourselves or whoever is laying out for us?
So you sure you don't want to just do an episode where we just like reminisce and talk about good old days?
A clip episode.
We could play like Good Riddance by Green Day in the background.
Yeah, Vitamin C Graduation.
Yes.
No, it's funny because I was just thinking about this the other day in terms of calling, yeah, but more of like things you want to like step out and do. Because I feel like everybody, no matter what you are doing right now, there is something, and maybe it's not even going to be this like life-altering thing where it's like I was doing this job and now I'm going to move across the country and do this job. But I think everybody has that thing where you're like, man, I've always wanted to do like this, or like, and the best way that I've heard it said was that if there's something you want to do and like you are scared to try it, or scared to get started, and they said, what's the worst that could happen? Because you're already, I'm trying to like think of the best way they said, you're already as not doing it as you could be right now. You couldn't be further away from doing it than you are in this moment. And so if you try it and it doesn't work out, worst case scenario, you'll just be where you are right now, which is still not doing it. But along with that, you'll also potentially have a question answered of like, is it possible?
Yeah, it's good. So then why? Because I agree with you, and I think intuitively we would all hear that, Kyle, and go, well, yeah, obviously. So then the question is, well, then why do we get so scared of change, and why do we get so scared to step in to these things? Because the reality is, and myself included, it's a scary thing, and I think it keeps a lot of people from doing things. And so what is that fear? And I don't know, maybe if we could identify what that is first, that would be helpful.
I was thinking about, obviously we're talking about calling, and like you said, in the circles we run, you hear the word calling a lot, and people being so certain about their calling or uncertain about their calling. And so when we get into that, I think that's where the fear comes. So I heard guy Pete Rollins say that there's two things that we want as humans, is satisfaction and certainty. Yeah. And as you go to pursue something, to Kyle's point, is all this fear sets in. You're like, well, what if I can't do it? Yeah. So a lot of times I only try things, I only attempt things that I know I'm going to succeed at because I'm certain about it. But what if I'm going to fail? Well, you'll be certain then that you suck at it. So, or you'll be certain that that's not your calling. And I think a little bit we give too much power to calling. And so or at least the way we think about it. And so I don't know, maybe if we maybe we help to flesh out calling or the way people are thinking about calling before we even address it.
Right.
Let's go to our
I-
coming
I-
to terms expert, Keith, to
Yes.
get a definition of
Thank
the
you,
word
Keith.
calling.
If you really, I mean, it's funny. Right before we started, I actually did look it up.
I knew,
course.
he knew you did. We knew you did.
I didn't do a lot of research on it, but it does come from the Latin vocare, which we also get the R word vocation from. And we'll talk about how that gets wrapped up into vocation and calling becomes a thing we do. And I think particularly in our world, I think the reason why calling, so it literally means just to call. It's a vocal thing, right? So that's what their word originally means. So it's this calling that's been placed on your life. It's you are being, and again in our circles, it's typically we use the phrase like it's God calling you. It's this voice that's calling you
Yeah.
out of the desert, out of the darkness, or into a different season, right? But I think one of the reasons why it gets so wrapped up and so fearful is that, especially in our world, what you do is who you are. And so the fear is not simply like, will I fail at it? But in failing at it, what does that say about me as a person? And I think the reason why failure for us is so fearful, so fraught with this sense of like, I don't know if this is going to work, is because if I go out and I do this thing and it fails, not just the thing fails, I fail. And then you have to come back to your community and say like, well, I was a failure. And they're like, well, then who are you? You know what I mean? I think it's a deeper question than just like, will this thing succeed? It's more like, well, will I succeed?
So when we talk about calling, we're talking about the attachment that it has to our identity.
Right. Our purpose.
And so therefore that begins to question, should I do that? Because if I go and fail, and I do not want to fail, I want to succeed. If I don't succeed, I fail, therefore I am a failure versus, and this is where I like to go with it, and I think me and Ryan have been talking about this for 3 years, is learning or figuring out what you're most effective in, or the things that you're most effective at, and pursue those things. And along the way, you will probably come across things that try it to find out what you shouldn't be doing.
Right.
And this kind of, I think, even I always say there's people that are born kindergarten teachers.
Right.
You know, it's like you're like, yes, and they could do something else, but I think there's people that can't be kindergarten teachers.
I can testify to that firsthand.
Yeah,
Yeah.
me too.
I subbed a kindergarten class one time, and it was the craziest experiment. Not experiment, that didn't happen.
Yeah. What did you do, man?
I'm going to want another take on that one. It was the craziest experience I've ever had, and I knew within about 20 minutes, this isn't me. I'm not supposed to be here right
Yeah,
now.
and so
Yeah,
in
the same thing.
that you go, okay, cool. You are not a failure. You are not, and you probably aren't called to be a kindergarten teacher. And so this is kind of why I get more interested in the way in which we think about calling, what's going on implicitly, like how we view it and how much focus we give it or power we give to it, because I have to find this perfect thing, because if I don't find this perfect thing, or we also maybe even expect our calling to fulfill us in this way where it's like, man, you're giving, again, way too much power to this thing to give you all of your happiness, all of your fulfillment. And I think that the thing that you're quote unquote called to is actually a byproduct of, or if you will marry who you are. So it's an expression of who you are.
That's great.
So Kyle's pursuing teaching, and so as you pursue teaching, you go, well, I know, and I've seen, I could tell you're going to be a good teacher, but you've been a terrible kindergarten teacher. So where should you teach? At what level? At what what subject even? So if you go to teach math, you're all right at math.
I could do like middle school math.
Yeah. And so that would actually, that therein lies going, well, that's not who you are. You're not wired to teach math.
Right, like in the same way,
right.
I think like it could be like in the same way you can't teach kindergarten would be the same way if a school was like, hey, we have an opening for like a physics teacher.
Yeah.
I can't teach physics.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times people don't see like working with young children. It's actually like the same thing. It's like, that's also not you.
And I think one of a comedian, Mitch Hedberg, had a great joke on this. He's like, as a comedian, he's always asked to like write scripts for movies, or he was. He's not with us anymore. And he said, that's like saying to a chef, yeah, you can cook, but can you farm? It's just like, no, because I learned how to cook.
It's a different
Yeah.
craft.
Yeah. So like, there's this sense
Oh,
that
that's good on getting into craft.
right, yeah, and I think that's part of it. But this idea of calling is part of your. There's a purpose for everybody has a purpose,
Right.
And I think part of the fear is discovering your purpose, and because the idea is if you don't discover your purpose, then you're purposeless. Which I don't think any of us fundamentally believe any person doesn't have a purpose.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's like I think to Travis, almost to your point, there is this process of just like going out there and
good.
taking risk and trying things. Just trying things to see where you fit in. What is your
Yes.
calling there?
So then following a calling, in my situation right now, what I'm not saying is I am called to go plant this specific church in this specific city, and if I'm not in Austin and I'm not doing X, Y, and Z, then I've completely missed it. But rather what I'm saying is, man, I really love being a pastor. And I really love the idea of being in new places and meeting new people and helping people and walking along with them and shepherding them. And this just happens to be another great fit, kind of like the next great fit for me. And so maybe calling is much less about the exact details and much more about the giftings and the craft and the things that you're passionate about, right?
Yeah, and go.
I think one of the big things, it's funny because this is going to be 2 episodes in a row now where I start harping on this. Time is a huge factor. Not only, and I think for two reasons that we can touch on, like the time aspect. Number one is because we don't want to, we find that, or we think that we are a failure if this new aspiration that we have does not click right away. And that like basically I really I feel like I'm called to doing this thing, and like if it's not booming in like the first month, we're like, maybe I shouldn't have done it. And then along with that, the thing that I think I feel more with going into teaching was, as I was considering whether or not I wanted to go back into teaching, it was after I had already done the several years of ministry. And I was to be honest, I was a little bit frustrated with myself, because it's one of those where, it's like, oh man, like, but I've already started putting all these years into ministry, and now I'm very frustrated with how much time I've wasted, because I was originally going to go into teaching, and then I changed and was like, well, maybe I want to do ministry. And so then now being in ministry and then realizing I wanted to go into teaching, it's one of those I've already started putting a lot of eggs in this basket. And so now for me, and it's funny because I think at this age, I'm only 27, to switch over, that's so frustrating. I could have been teaching this whole time. But I think, what I've had, the conversation I've had with several people is that I think I needed to do ministry to realize that teaching was actually what I really wanted to do.
Yeah.
But and you and I have had long conversations about all that. Is there's that other element I think in there that was a part of that decision was, will this satisfy me to no end? And so you went through the ministry to figure out you did really, because initially day one I met you, I want to be a teacher,
right?
And then it was but wait, maybe what if teaching won't fulfill me,
Right?
And so I think your calling will fulfill you to a degree, but then there comes in the risk, and you go, dang, that's a lot. I'm putting I'm putting on my chips there. And so in hindsight, you go, man, I should have just stuck with teaching. And you go, but you kind of didn't, for whatever reason.
Right.
You didn't know, but you also were really good at ministry and you enjoyed it.
Right.
And it wasn't, there was also elements within that you will find in the classroom. And so, but at the end of the day, it goes, but that avenue you seem to fit that probably better. You're more passionate about it. You're more excited about that. And I do think that is an element, because I personally don't buy it that you will be miserable in your calling.
Right.
I don't buy that. I think you'll have miserable seasons. I think you'll question and doubt it.
I think it would have been the opposite too, that if I had directly gone into teaching, I think I would have always wondered about ministry.
And I wonder if that's just a byproduct of of who you are, because I'm that way. Is someone told me this advice was find something, stick with it, man. Just go for it. And you're I really love that advice. the other side of it is who's helping me pull out of me who I am, so that I can go instead of pursuing something that
And-
does not fit with me.
And I don't want to be the same person 10 years from now that I am today.
Right.
Sure.
Or what about
Yeah.
what about like the steps along with it too?
Right.
Like where we're like, I'm already like invested into this career or this goal or things like that. And that is like, I'm feeling like really called to this thing over there. But that's gonna like, I gotta go back to school or like all these things. And so we think like, nah, I'm not gonna do it.
I think there's something else going on that gets into this idea of risk and why we are so averse to it, or we kind of avoid it. And it goes back to, Travis, what you were saying was this idea that I think we have this idea of calling, and I think we think once I find my calling, everything should be good from there.
Yeah.
Right? We should never struggle. It should be
Yeah.
easy. Kyle, to your point about time, it shouldn't be like it shouldn't take right away, and all this stuff. And so it's like, and I think, and I've been one of the fortunate ones in that I've known what I've wanted to do, and it's lined up with my talents, it's lined up with my passion, and it's lined up, thankfully, with opportunities of being a teacher since I was 14, which is, I know it's the exception. Like I know that doesn't happen. So I've known my calling since that long, but when I started teaching at 23. It wasn't until 28 that I felt like I was in any way adequate to step in a classroom.
And
That's
would-
5 years.
And would you say even within this calling,
Right.
you've had to make decisions on like location,
Right.
and things
yeah.
like that.
And so a lot of that stuff comes into it, and and there are still days I don't want to do it, and I love teaching, and I'll get up and I'm like, I don't want to do it today.
So
Right.
what you're saying to me reminds me of a relationship.
yeah.
You're like, oh man, this is gonna just.
Right.
I found her, or
Right.
I found him, and they go, they go, this is it. I'm gonna be happy.
Yeah.
And then you go, it's week 2,
Yeah.
and you're like, I wanted to go play ball with the boys, but we're spending time. But
Right.
you're like, wait, I love spending time
Right.
with you. Like I can't wait to hang out with you. I like you, and you're like. Oh, but like it's okay for LeBron not to want to go to practice, or more fitting, Allen Iverson. You go,
Yeah.
you love this game,
Yeah.
but all of a sudden he's like, I don't want to go to practice, and you're like,
yeah.
So to both of these points, and I think this is where we really need to go. I think that we put too much pressure on calling.
yeah.
I think that we are asking calling to fix a giant hole in our hearts that it just can't fix. It's on the way to doing that, but it doesn't. And the reason I know that is because I know I'm going to get to Austin. I'm going to get going, and it's going to be fun and exciting and new, and then it's not.
you're gonna hit a hurdle, or you're going to
Right.
something's gonna bump up against
The hype.
your fantasy.
The hype is going to wear off.
or it's going to be like a slow start.
Slow start, whatever, all
Right.
sorts of different things that are going to have to happen. And I'm going to have to come face to face with the reality that although, yes, I feel like I'm supposed to be doing this,
Right.
doing this alone is not going to complete this, whatever, this contentment that I'm looking for, right? And so I think that we talk to people all the time, and it seems like a common denominator is like, well, yeah, I want you to know what you're on this earth to do and what your
Right.
calling is, but you got to know like that's not going to fix everything. And so maybe our calling is just to be humans, right? Our calling is to take one day at
Yeah.
a time and interact with everybody that we come into contact with and love and help and be generous and go. And along the way, we're going to do lots of different things, but those things aren't the things that are going to bring us that.
So
that purpose.
then is it we're giving too much power and meaning to calling, or I don't think we have to back off from actually giving it the power that it's supposed. How do I want to say this? Is I think we have a wrong perspective on
Right.
it, and if we can kind of boil it down to this what it is, then we can actually expect it to do what it is meant to do.
I think we need to start realizing that calling, like I said at the beginning, like when I said earlier, is like that this specific type of calling has been attached to vocation, to job, to action, to making a living, right? But I think we need to realize that we don't have a calling on our life; we have callings.
Yeah,
plural,
I would
on our
agree
life.
with you.
Yeah.
So I have a job.
yeah.
I'm a husband. I'm going to be a father.
Ayo.
I'm a son. I'm
real
a brother.
soon.
I'm a
Pretty soon,
friend.
right?
Yeah. Like she's 35 today, 35 weeks. So,
You're a great host of a podcast.
but I'm saying like each one of these are different. So I think if we can think of callings instead of like the end of something
the
as
end
a
all.
role
Okay.
within a larger calling to be human, as Ryan was saying. So I think if we realize that this is Ryan's calling for what he needs to do in sort of in ministry right now, but that doesn't mean he gives up all the he doesn't have other callings on his life at the same time, right? You're still a brother, a friend. You're still like all these other things. You're a pastor. You're a mentor. Like all these.
You wanted to
sorts of
say
things.
husband, but then you. Oh,
Well, that's fine.
Well, I mean,
a
there
real-
are women
a
in
cool
Austin.
guy.
that-
you're real neat.
Bachelor.
but I mean,
You're just all right.
but the idea of it, but there are going to be women in Austin. So, this idea of just we each have our thing going on. That we need to realize that's a calling, and you
So then
can't
once
neglect,
again,
you can't neglect all the other ones for the one that gives you money.
So then we pigeonholed the word calling.
Yeah.
And we've made it this thing. And here's the other thing people are thinking when they hear calling. They automatically look at people who look like they're so sure.
yeah.
They look like
Yeah.
they're so sure because they hold positions in society that we've decided those are the callings. So a professional athlete, even like a teacher,
Yeah.
a firefighter.
I feel that way, even in the season of sitting down and having lots of one-on-one conversations and hearing people go, that's just so great that you know exactly what you're supposed to do. And I go, so like I'm terrified.
Yeah.
Just so you know.
Yeah.
Like this isn't like 100% certainty that came down from heaven and I know exactly what I'm going to do. Right. And I think LeBron would say the same thing.
Yeah, and I think there's something about that. Just like calling is a vocal sort of, it's talking about to call, like meaning it's an action.
Are you saying to call into action to do something that
so like
you can fulfill?
whether
or-
it's actually a physical like vocal thing or not, but like what I was saying is if the thing is to call, that means there is a response needed.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's the risk that we're talking about. That you are not. It's not that you're certain that this is happening. You felt called and you're responding to the call, which is inherently risky, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's stories all the time of people who are responded to calls without knowing what's going to happen,
Right.
and they have to do it, right? It's just
911.
Yeah, I mean, there's that. I mean,
every
there's
day.
yeah. You need to respond to something,
Yeah.
and that's what I think mostly what calling is about.
I think a perfect example of like multiple callings and like people that seem sure and things like that is Kanye. So you have Kanye, who's become like this huge hip hop artist, and so you would say like the average person would look at him and go like, he's made it in what he's been called to do. Like you'd say, there's nothing else that you need to pursue, man.
Right.
Like you are at the top of your game in what you're being called to do, and yet you'll find him with such angst and such frustration. A couple years ago over him wanting to break into the fashion world and people not giving him a chance and things like that. And so a lot of, you would look at that and you'd be like, why are you so frustrated, dude? Like, just do music. Like,
Right.
Yeah.
But what I think, so a perfect example there is that he is feeling yet another calling to pursue something else that he is being denied because he has been pigeonholed into, no, this is your calling. And they are not letting him expand into a second calling that he feels compelled to pursue.
Dang, that's so good because that
Yeah.
is our need to put everything into a box.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And we have to
Yes.
compartmentalize
Yeah.
everything in it. I need to know where you stand
Right.
in relation to
So-
me and to the rest of
So
society.
here's my question then: how much of this fear of calling has to do with other people being able to identify you?
Well,
To that extent, like,
I
so
would-
it's like so you're going to plant church. How much of the risk is like, are people just going to see me as a church planter or a pastor? Like, how much of your identity is the fear of the risk is wrapped up in the external sort of view of this?
Yeah. So I think the big question is, well, what if we fail? Right. So like, what if I get down there and 5 years from now, it's me and my brother still, like in our car,
but which
like
is even
hanging out, whatever.
What if you fail? What does that look like? What's the
Yeah, what is
picture of
actually-
I failed?
what is failing?
Does
And
that
so-
mean,
And so you see what happens here is the world has different ways of defining success.
Right.
Right. And naturally that's on my mind. Right.
Yeah.
in the church world, we talk about life change a lot, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is it changing lives? Is it saving souls? Whatever terms you want to use, which I don't like most of them, and have whatever. That's a different podcast.
We'll have you back, Ben.
But these are the narratives that I've been hearing forever, and so now that it's my turn, it's really hard for me to just go, oh yeah, I'm not affected by like how much life change is coming out of my church. Of course I am, and of course the reason I want to go down there is to find those people that are asking questions and who grew up going to church in Texas and then got really bitter about it all because they weren't allowed to ask questions, and so I've ran away to Austin and now are 23, wondering what it means to live life and be human. Of course, I want to find as many of those people as I can and sit down with them and have conversations and do that, and that makes me come alive, right? That makes me, that I feel like I'm following my calling when I do that.
So it seems like there's another element there, though, that is, I want to test myself. I want to, your point, Keith, because back earlier we were talking, and Kyle's point and what Ryan's saying is how much is that wrapped up in identity,
Right.
And how the fear of what will people say about me
Right.
if I fail or if I succeed. It's both. It's boils down to an identity issue in that way, right? Very Henry Nouwen-esque.
Yeah.
And so you go, well, I think it's good that we want to go and not only go do that thing that you want to go do with all these young people and old people, whatever age group or whatever, to bring life change. But there's also an element that I think if we don't want to test ourselves, if we don't want to see what we're made of, if we don't want to see then there's no point, because we all got to figure out what we're made of. That's why we have the airplane. That's why it's because someone goes, hey,
We can do this.
we can do this. Let's see if we can do this.
Right,
And you go,
right.
well, that seems self-serving. You're like, you know what? You have pseudo humility anyway. You have to be able to go, hey, yo, I think I'm good at this. I want to go see if I'm good at this. Why is that wrong?
Yeah. There's also, I think there is a little bit of that. There's a little bit of reaction from other people of this arrogance that people are afraid of. Like when you tell them this is what I'm going to go do, they're like, well, that's arrogant or that's egotistical. And you're like, no, like that wasn't.
Why
Right.
is that area? So my
And I
brother
think-
one day
right,
was
exactly.
walking through this like really beautiful neighborhood in Long Beach, our whole family, and he goes, oh, dude, I want a house like that. And someone in my family goes, what? Oh, you think you get it? He goes, I didn't say I wanted someone to give it to me.
Right.
I want to go work for it. I want to put, why can't I dream?
Right.
Why can't I have that
Yeah.
dream? Like, why can't I put it? Yeah, you know what? I may never live there. But at the end of the day, we have all these people that are just dream killers.
Yeah.
And also, like, the moment you say you want to do something great, and I don't mean in society's terms, meaning being a millionaire or being famous, it's just you want to go do something, you want to pursue a cause, you want to pursue something great.
Substantial.
This is like the dance mom syndrome.
Yes.
Or the soccer dad syndrome. Like you were afraid to pursue your own passion, and now you're taking it out on other people.
Yeah, so you're going to end up paying for rehab
Yeah,
for the coke problem
yeah.
that you created
So-
in your child who's 13 wearing nothing on stage, and you're going, sorry, I'm a little passionate. But you go, come on, like, why do we feel the need to? And because, too, we're threatened by people who go and stick their neck out.
Yeah.
We're threatened by people who want to take a risk because you're going, I want to be like you. I want to take a risk. I want to not only do music, I want to start one of the dopest shoe lines, easy, right, is... And so they do. They go, we need you to just be an artist.
Right.
Leave the fashion game alone. He's like, I'm more than just, that's why, and then you go, oh, dude, that's a great example.
Thank you.
No, you're just a producer. You're just a producer. And he goes, no, I can rap. You're
Right.
just a producer. You just make beats, Kanye. He goes, nah, I can rap. So now and then he's like, right, and he has a song called like Facts right now. He's like, I just did the numbers. Like, I'm better. And everyone's like, oh, you're so arrogant. And he goes, it's the truth. And so you speak even truth into who you are. You say you did something good, and we're not saying put an honor roll sticker on the back of your car. But at the end of the day, we can't like even talk about the things that we're good at or the things that we're good, because if you do, you're arrogant, you're full of yourself. You're like, why can't God, man, when God like created, whether you believe in God or not, God went, created, good, created, good, created. Then he made humans, very good. And so why can't we go, dang, that was a really good song. Did you hear that?
Right.
So no, you got to make it and sit there and wait for everyone to validate you.
Right.
And that's insane
And
when it comes to our calling.
Yeah, and I think part of the calling I think we need to realize, and this was something I had to work through, is we need to be able to do it and not, and again, like we've been talking about, not care what other people say. You don't do it for that, right? Because if you're doing it for the external validation, that's where people realize the satisfaction. That's where it's empty, right?
Yeah.
So
you want feedback,
Right.
but the motivation
Right.
behind it can't be, Will, and
Yeah.
we'll use Ryan, like, what's everyone going to think about me?
Right.
I'm leaving this one life stage and I'm headed into this other season of my life. And I also, like, and that's just human to actually have those
Right.
thoughts.
I would say though, on the flip side, because we all know people who think that every time we talk to them, every week we talk to them, there's a new calling on their life.
Yeah.
So I think there is a value, and this goes back to Kyle, what you were saying. There's a value on putting in the time, and so there's a value to like struggle. There's a value to I like so the analogy that kind of came to my mind was like, and Travis, you're probably going to be going through this relatively soon. It's like when a little baby's trying to walk, the parent doesn't hold that baby's hands and walk with them. They have to sort of step kind of across the room and call them to them, right? So the pain, the risk, this fear in calling is, I know that this is going to hurt. I know that
There'll
this
be
is
some
painful,
stumbling and
this is a threshold.
yeah.
But this is a
Yeah.
threshold I have to cross, because if I don't, I'm
good.
never going to be different. I'm never going to grow. I'm never going to be on the other side. There is
Right.
pain to it.
And I can't tell you how many times I've had ideas of things I wanted to do. And I've gotten to maybe that threshold where it's like, all right, now and I've gone, no, I'm not really going to do
Yeah.
that. Like, but
Yeah.
then to be honest, then it's kind of embarrassing,
Right.
Because like it's embarrassing because of the people that I've talked to that I'm going
Right.
to do, and so then when you get the question like, whatever happened with that, and you have to come up with like, yeah, it just didn't work out.
Not the right time.
Yeah.
But I think that's funny because, again, going like, no one laughs at the baby when they fall. Like, but we're
Yeah.
constantly afraid that people are going to laugh at us when we fall.
And
or
you
calling.
you cheer on the one step and then the
Right.
fall.
Yeah. So it's like,
You know?
you celebrate. So I think there is that fear. The fear is, and what Ryan, what you're doing is a very public thing, right? Meaning not just you're sharing it with a lot of people, but like you're moving out and all that. So if it doesn't work,
We're gonna know about
Walk
it.
of shame coming back.
there is, but this idea of that we can't worry about that. I think the other thing is that we think of calling and vocation as outcomes based, rather, and that's the
good.
wrong way to think of vocation and calling. Like your calling isn't an outcome, right?
Right.
The purpose of life isn't to have an outcome, isn't to produce like a definable like, I've done this in a box.
Therefore
Travis.
I am.
Right. It's like, no, I am in the process. I am in the
Of
work
becoming.
of becoming,
Yeah.
of being. I think that's the other thing. It's like, it's not being called past tense or in that sense. It's calling. It's a continuous sense. Like I always have a calling on my life. Not
Right, like, I
I
think-
have been called or I was called or.
I think that achievement, what you're talking about, lines up with what we were talking about as far as like satisfaction
Right.
from a calling. Is that we treat finding a calling like getting married, where you're like, great, now that I found this calling,
Yeah.
like I am completely satisfied and I will never be left wanting, and this is just gonna be awesome forever, every day.
Well, yeah, you kind of it's the final destination.
Right.
This calling is my final destination. You go, no, because it can't be. It like LeBron can't play in the NBA forever. So there has to. So professional athletes are great to look at.
Yeah, this is a great example.
Even musicians, but you go, oh, he was called to be in the NBA. Yeah, maybe. Like he chose that, and so this goes back
Right,
to what
right.
I'm saying is,
And like while he loves the NBA, there's no way that LeBron never has thoughts of like, oh, that'd be kind of cool to go do this. though.
But to that point, most of LeBron's life is going to be outside of the NBA.
Yes.
If you look at how long he lives, right? Most of what he's going to do in his life is going to be not in the NBA.
at least
Right.
not on the court.
But you know that he's
Well, right, that's what I mean, but, like,
he
not on the
still-
court, yeah.
But
Yeah.
he still has the thoughts too of I love the NBA so much, and obviously I'm going to keep playing.
Right.
There's a life
but
after.
yeah, but more than this, but also that looks kind of cool
Well,
too.
but hasn't he
Like,
started like producing films and stuff? Like, hasn't he started on
he
that
has his
side?
hands in a lot of different
But
things.
but
I
I'm
think.
saying like there's some things that and we see.
Yeah.
It's
them all
like
the
when
time.
Peyton bought all those Papa Johns,
yes.
and we're sitting there just like, what are you doing? And then you realize, like, well, he's a human.
Yeah.
You know, like he
But
thinks
wait-
about football all the time.
and then
That's a
they
good
legalized
point.
marijuana, and he's like, oh.
Yeah, we got you, man. We got you,
That's a
man.
good point though, because what we do in that moment, we go, dude, you're an NFL quarterback, Papa John's.
Yeah.
You know, you kind of go,
Yeah.
You look like you're about to deliver the pizza.
Yeah.
You know, and you're
He
going,
looks like Pop.
Yeah,
looks
he
80
looks
yards
like I'm
for a
giving
Super
him
Bowl
10.
Yeah,
win.
that's what I'm saying. What'd
Come
you
on.
say?
He said you're about to deliver the pizzas. I said 80 yards for a Super Bowl win.
We have some Bronco fans in the podcast.
Yeah, I know.
So I think that right there we keep. There's so many.
Yeah.
There's so many like facets to this conversation of like where it's going and how we think of it and how we view it in our own lives, but in everybody else's. And it's this constant comparison. Like I'm not doing. Me and Ryan were talking about this the other day. Is with a buddy. Is we wake up half the time and go, what am I doing?
Right.
And we look at other people and we go, man, they have it figured out.
Yeah.
And then Ryan made a good point. He goes, you know, there's people that look at us and think they have it figured out, like
Yeah.
in these meetings
Yep.
you're having with people. And it reminded me of one of my favorite Wes Anderson films, Rushmore, where you have Max Fisher, who's this like 15, 16-year-old kid who's going to a private school who got in because he wrote a hit play, one-act play. And then you have Bill Murray playing this very wealthy, self-made millionaire, billionaire,
Right.
whatever he is. His kids are going, he's going through all this crazy stuff with his family, and he looks at Max, the 15-year-old who's in school, and goes, what's the secret, Max? And the irony there is so beautiful because you go, no, he should be asking you because
Right.
you're the millionaire.
Right.
And I think we are constantly looking at everybody else to validate, am
Right.
I doing what I'm saying? And so a big part of why I'm very passionate about this is because, and it's not a shot at anybody, but I don't think anybody was helping me discover who I am. And I think out of who you are is how you figure out what the things are, and someone pulling that out of you and also giving you the right. So Mayweather's a great example is his family told him, you're the best ever. Now he had the talent and the skill. He had all the things that obviously we can see he was able to capitalize on. However, if he had a family that said like, oh, you think you're going to be a boxer?
Right.
And shut him down. So you do need people in your life to push you and go, I see that in you. This is what I see. This is a good thing. Whatever
Yeah.
it is, whether you are a nurse or you lay brick, whatever that is, and then you go, hey, go. Yes, go and do it. And then I'm going to try and set you up as best as possible to make sure I'm gonna be a catalyst for you
Right.
to send you off there. So for Keith is, yo, I'm gonna give you books, man. I'm gonna help you. I'm gonna know you are going to, because
Right.
look at man, this is a good thing.
So do you also then in turn need people to help you be self-aware?
Absolutely.
And
Yeah,
so that like when
definitely.
if you're thinking right now like about that goal, like for example, when I was writing about this the other day, I wrote that when I was in elementary school, you know what my goal was? To play on the Lakers. And so
I've seen you hold a basketball. man.
yeah. And so now at 27, if I decided like, you know what, I'm going to re-spark that goal. Like, hey, somebody would need to come alongside.
You couldn't even make the sparks with that spark.
Yeah. Somebody would need to come
Ooh.
alongside me and go, hey man, that's not your goal.
But you're
Yeah.
self-aware and you go, that was cute, man. I was 5.
right.
Yeah.
And at 15,
I wasn't 5.
yeah. How old were you?
I'll have
You
you
were
know.
25.
I'll
You were
have you guys know.
I hope it was younger.
that in up until 8th grade, I was in the starting 5 on 2 different basketball teams.
Up until the 8th grade,
And
everybody was in a starting 5 on 2 basketball teams.
I also went to a private school.
Because there's an A team, a B team, a C
Yeah.
team.
We can't play if you don't play, man.
That's right. I'm just saying.
But if at 15 you haven't recognized that, especially if you're not competing at a high level at Nike camps, you're not going to be on any team. You're not going to be on the Timberwolves.
Right.
You know, so you go, yes, you have to, and this goes back to realizing what it is
Yeah.
you are and what it is you are not. It's not just about like if you can think of it, imagine it, you can become that. And you're
Right.
like, that is garbage.
Yeah,
That's not
But-
true.
But the truth is, for Kyle, for you, it's like you needed to be able to want to be on the Lakers. You needed that exploration of yourself at a younger age. Like at a certain point, someone's going to
yeah.
tell you that
Yeah,
that's
not a
not
problem.
happening.
Well, we would say
right.
yes, 'cause I-
Dreaming's not a problem.
Right.
'Cause I was-
But the self-awareness is important. Like, but you need to be able to discover that self-awareness as well.
Dude, what is it, Uncle Buck? It's like I don't want to know a 4-year-old who's not a dreamer.
Yeah, because you
Right.
do, and then you help
But
them.
that speaks to Travis, to your point, is like and this is sort of to all of our listeners out there, like if you see someone and they're good at something, like tell them they're good at it. Like you don't know what they're not hearing about that.
Absolutely.
So it's the idea of like, don't only, because there is this, and there's even self-awareness, like do it in this like loving manner, but this idea is that we all need to be on a journey. We all realize that we're all being called in different directions or being calling.
So this is what I was trying to say earlier, and I totally blanked when Ryan was saying this, is identifiable giftedness that you could just see plain as day.
Right.
Good for you, man. That's cool. But there's the majority of people,
Right.
we can't see from the outside how
Right.
good of an artist they are, or what a great public speaker they are, or you like this, man, you're a kindergarten teacher. How do you see that?
Yeah.
How do you see that in somebody until you start to really dig down into who they are? Because here's what I know about Kyle is always creating, I don't even know if you know this, creating opportunities to teach people what you just learned. That's a teacher, yo.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, he just learned something about himself.
Yeah.
ladies and gentlemen. He went, what? I go, you're always setting up conversations to share with others what you just learned.
Yeah.
And so if no one sees that in you or tells you, and so, you can go into a lot of different arenas in this world to teach something, but you need to be teaching.
Right.
Like, that's the kind of, and so, like, my brother is an artist. He knew, and we both took art classes, and in my family, there's a lot of artists. There's just a lot of creative minds. My brother was far more, I think, artistic in a very tangible way than I would be. And so he was this incredible painter, and he can draw just lights out. My cousin's the same way. And he gets into college, and I'm an artist. And then he takes one photography class, another form of art. He is a professional photographer right now. Right. And so we saw that in him, but we also saw another level of passion in him. And it was no mistake that he could pursue this. And then in college, it probably would have tested him.
Right.
But these identifiable gifts, and so these kids go into college, and they're expecting college to help them figure out what they want to do.
Right.
And then they're all of a sudden 4 years, and they're like, what internship are you thinking? Like, I thought someone was going to knock on my door.
Right.
And now they are on their couch, and they want to go travel the world for free, or they want to go over here because they don't want, because that looks fun.
Right.
And so you're going like, hey, that sucks. Nobody helped you identify because your gift wasn't identifiable. Like LeBron, we know at 16 was playing in camps against Michael Jordan, and he was able to hang with him, and he's going bucket for bucket, and everyone goes, it's obvious. He's going to the NBA.
Right.
But this guy over here, it's not so obvious if you can't, if you're not a great boxer, you're not, your voice. Like, my wife has an incredible voice. You can be a singer.
Right.
What was my thing? I didn't know. It was
Right. And I think
very
that's
hard to identify.
The other thing with this idea of calling is we can't play the comparison game.
Exactly.
Like you can't compare, because we're all in our late 20s, early 30s, and we've all had a different journey, and we're all in different places in our careers, respectively. And it's like you can't compare each other, right? We can't. And then people who know us can't compare themselves to us. We've all had different journeys, and that, Travis, what you're talking about, like just because you haven't figured it out exactly sort of what you're good at and what your talent is at 25, and you know your friend who's been working consistently since 17, like that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You know?
Here's a great example, I think, of like non-occupational calling too.
Right.
My wife, Taylor, she's always told me, I feel very called to be a mother.
Right.
Like
yeah.
I feel very called to be a mother, and so it's one of those where it's not like that she is saying like that this is this big like career aspiration or things like that. What she is saying is that I feel as though if I am not in a motherly role, like if I am not a mother to children, that I feel like I will have missed out on something that I feel like I was like destined to do.
And just as a quick aside, like, can we stop shaming people for those sorts of callings?
Right.
Like, can we stop shaming people for doing non-traditional
Right,
callings? Like that's terrible. Let's just stop with that.
That's what
absolutely.
that is what she brings up when we talk about like career,
Right.
her and I had the conversation, and it was, I can like remember like some of like the first times we were talking about this where we were talking about like, what do you want to do? Like,
Right.
what is it you want to do? Like for me, it's like I decided I want to go to teaching. She will tell anybody that asks her that, like, I just really want to be a mom.
I love it.
Right.
And I feel like my calling is like to raise really great children.
Yeah.
Right.
And so that's why like so she works at the church in like a like more administration capacity right now, and she said, I think I will always just do roles like that to where it's not this like, man, you went to school to pursue this
Right.
like big career. She said,
But that's a voice from outside
Right.
that it
Right.
shames
Right.
that role.
right. So she's saying,
Right.
she said, I have no problem always just having like a job
Right.
part time to
Yeah.
help
Yes.
provide
Yes.
to help provide for the family,
Exactly.
so that I can follow my calling, which is to be a mother.
So hold on. So let me. I could brag about Tay. Is it's interesting, and so I'm a high school pastor at the church we're talking about, and so we work with teenagers, and Taylor gives up her free time to mother
Yeah.
a bunch of teenagers and invest in them, and you can see the I would argue all women have a motherly
Right.
instinct. There's nothing wrong. I think it's great. I think I don't have a motherly instinct. I have a fatherly one.
Right.
And I look at the way my wife loves our son. I'm like, wow, you're better. Like, but it's not even better. It's just different. But they have this special power, and I just go,
Right.
dude, women are insane.
Right.
And so right now, until Kyle becomes a daddy, is
By the way, that is the creepiest way to say that.
I know. I chose to say it creepy, Keith. Daddy Kyle.
Yeah, I'll keep everybody updated.
That's what his name tag says. We wear name tags on. She is mothering. Like she is doing that, and she's doing
Yeah.
it very well. And so that idea. And speaking of, you reminded me of a friend who was explaining to me there's this societal pressure
Right.
to be this CEO woman, this career woman. Awesome. If that is how you're wired as a
Go
woman,
do it, yeah.
yo, do it. Because I've seen incredible
Yeah.
women fulfill those roles, and they crush it better than any man would do, you know? So you kind of
Yeah.
go, yeah, I'm mocking that whole thing.
Yeah.
And she goes, I was buying into that pressure to
Yeah.
fit into this box,
Right.
because that's what's happening today. So now what we do is we swing the pendulum over here, and
Right.
it's wrong if you want to be a stay-at-home mom, which I go, oh my, do you want the hardest job on earth? Be a
Right.
stay-at-home mom, because that is 24/7 attention, unless you're a terrible mother who just neglects your child. And so you go, oh, I can do this and have a job, or even, hey, how about this? Like, because I also know I can see even Tay probably doing her own business from home if she wants to be a stay-at-home or work in the work field and kind of go back and forth. You're like, there's plenty of women, especially in our age, that are creating their own careers in
Right.
their household, blogging or DIY, all whatever, or starting something online. And they're also going, hey, I'm smarter than you. I make money and watch my kid.
Yeah.
Right.
And how rad is that? That's
Yeah.
incredible to the point.
And thinking also with both of these, like this idea of multiple callings, non-occupational and specific, like how they impact the other callings in your life, right? So Ryan and I were hanging out the other night, and I was telling him that like since I found out that my wife was pregnant, and I don't know why it seems, especially since it was a daughter, but that's part of it, especially since I'm having a daughter. This idea that I've felt this drive and desire to do things that I've always wanted to do, but I've just never done it.
Yeah.
And I think part of it is what we've been talking about. Like I was telling him, I think part of it is because I know there's going to be less time to do it, and I don't want to lose that part of myself that I've always sort of, it's always been there. I've just never pursued it. But I realize, like with a daughter and family, like I'm not going to have the time to dedicate it only to that as I do now. And so, but I don't want to lose that part of me, right? Of writing, communicating, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Yeah.
that's a part of me that I don't want to lose. And so there's this fire in me. The second I learned that I was a father, that changed
Yeah.
the way I look at my other occupation, my other callings. And it's completely shifted how I'm viewing it. And so I now know that I need to do more than just the thing that I've been doing for the last few years. I need to add something to it, even as I'm adding a person to my family. I need to add something to my calling, because if I don't, I am losing an essential part of myself if I just forget it and I leave it off to the side, and I've been neglecting it for so long.
Right.
So I think to the point of like, Taylor's always wants to be a mom. That doesn't take anything away, and when she's a mom, it's going to change how she relates to her job, right? To her whatever she's doing.
Sure.
So I mean, I think that's an important part to remember, that these are not, you don't keep them in separate boxes. They're not distinct from each other.
Totally.
Awesome.
Yeah.
It's good. And
So Ryan's not afraid anymore.
I'm gonna go, guys. I'm gonna do this.
All right.
But I would say
Texas forever.
Texas forever. I would
Longhorns,
say,
baby.
yeah, Longhorns, Sycamore. Hey, I want to be the chaplain of the Texas Longhorns football team. So if anyone listening has a connection, please let me know immedially about that.
Matthew McConaughey.
Are they in Austin?
Yeah,
They're
they are.
awesome.
UT Austin is the Longhorns.
They're right there.
Okay.
But I think
Hey,
I should pin you for a
You
football
asked,
guy.
that's what letting you know.
I said okay.
Keith jumped in real quick.
Yeah.
I think that question was
Yes.
directed to me.
You just got called out, man.
Well, too late.
That's good. There's a lot here. There's a lot here, and if you're still listening at this point and you're going, what are the takeaways? I think really what we're saying is don't be afraid to try things, right? Don't be afraid to step out and take risks and just go. And if you fail, then whatever, try something else. Do it. And I think there's a second there of the craft, right? Of when you start to figure out what your craft is. Gladwell talks about the 10,000 hour rule, right? It just takes time and reps and practice, and there aren't a whole lot of Mozarts, right? Most of us have to put in the hours, and so you practice, and then I would say there's an intersection between what your craft is, what you're good at, and then on the other end, I would say just what makes you come alive. What do you get to the end of the day and go, that was good? Like I feel like I'm a human today, and there's something to be said. I feel like I have to give like a closing conclusion. I'm sorry, but there's something to be said about following the life and chasing the life, chasing the things that make you come alive. Because I'm convinced that that's why we're on this earth. That we're here to experience an abundant and full life, and it's about being brave enough to do that. Whether that's being a stay-at-home mom, a CEO, a writer, podcaster, an artist, a basketball player, a teacher, a doctor, a lawyer, a whatever. And so life's too short to not do that. So I think that's what I want to say. Follow the life.
If you're tired of sifting through flea markets for rare and unique games, we can help. Retro City Games in Henderson, Nevada, only 5 minutes from the Las Vegas Strip, has all your favorite gaming staples, classics, and a wide selection of rare games with new stuff always appearing on our shelves. Come in and chat with Nicole or Doug about your love of games and watch as they help you complete your collection or find your childhood favorite. And don't forget, Retro City Games loves trade-ins. So if you have any Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Sega, Xbox, PlayStation, or even PC games, come in and visit Retro City Games today. Welcome to the new metropolis of gaming, Retro City Games.
That's to us people that can feel things. It hurts.